When people think of laziness, they often imagine someone who simply doesn't care, someone who has the energy but chooses not to use it. But depression is an entirely different reality, and one of its most painful disguises is the way it steals your energy. Waking up in the morning feels like dragging yourself through mud. Even though you may have slept for hours, your body feels heavy, your mind foggy, and the idea of starting the day seems impossible. It isn't about lacking discipline or willpower, it's about your brain and body carrying an invisible weight that others cannot see. You may look at others going about their routines effortlessly and wonder why it feels so much harder for you. That's where shame often creeps in. Society tells us that if we just try harder, push more, or toughen up, we should be able to get on with things. But the truth is that depression is not a choice. It is a state that drains motivation at its core. Where laziness is a refusal to act, depression is a struggle to act despite a deep longing to feel normal again. That's why it is so painful, because inside you want to get up, move, and engage with life, yet something in you keeps pulling you back down. Even basic things like brushing your teeth, preparing a meal, or returning a simple text can feel like monumental tasks, not because you don't care, but because your energy has been hijacked. Imagine trying to run with weights tied to your ankles and a storm blowing against you. This is what depression feels like. From the outside, it might appear as if you're doing nothing, but inside you are fighting a silent battle no one else can fully understand. This difference is important because it removes the harsh label of lazy that so many depressed people place on themselves. You are not lazy for feeling exhausted, for needing more time, or for struggling with tasks that others take for granted. You are dealing with an illness that affects your mind, your body, and your spirit. And recognizing this truth is the first step to compassion, both from yourself and from those around you. So when you feel drained and unable to move forward, remind yourself, this is not laziness, it is depression, and with awareness and support you can begin to heal. One of the clearest ways to see the difference between laziness and depression is in how ordinary, everyday tasks suddenly feel overwhelming. When someone is lazy, they simply don't want to do the work. They might procrastinate or avoid responsibility because they'd rather relax. But with depression, it isn't about avoiding tasks because you don't care. It's about struggling to find the mental and emotional strength to even begin. Something as simple as taking a shower can feel like climbing a mountain. Making a meal feels like preparing for a marathon. Even sending a short message back to a friend can feel impossible, not because you don't value the connection, but because your energy is completely depleted. This is why so many people living with depression experience guilt and shame on top of their exhaustion. They know the dishes are piling up, they know the laundry needs to be folded, they know they've missed important deadlines or texts. They're aware of what needs to be done, and yet every time they think about doing it, the weight of the task feels crushing. That's not laziness. It's a symptom of a deeper struggle. It's depression taking what should be simple and turning it into something that feels unbearable. It's also why people with depression often describe feeling stuck. They aren't choosing to ignore responsibilities. They're paralyzed by the enormity of them. Laziness doesn't come with this internal conflict, but depression does. Inside there is a voice that wants to move forward, that wants to catch up, that wants to get life back on track. But the body and mind don't cooperate. The disconnect between desire and ability creates a cycle of frustration and despair which only deepens the sense of being trapped. That understanding this distinction matters, because when we label someone as lazy for struggling with basic tasks, we are dismissing the reality of their pain. We are overlooking the silent battle they face every single day. Instead of judgment, what they need is compassion and support. Recognizing that these overwhelming feelings are a sign of depression, not a flaw in character, can open the door to healing and break the cycle of self-blame. So, if the smallest tasks feel impossibly heavy, know this: you're not weak and you're not lazy. You're carrying something much larger than others can see, and acknowledging it is the first step toward relief. Another sign that what you are experiencing is depression rather than laziness is the deep loss of interest and joy in things that once lit you up. Laziness means you might not feel like doing something right now, but if the activity is genuinely enjoyable, you'll likely engage when the mood strikes. Depression, however, robs you of that spark. The hobbies you once loved feel flat. The music that used to move you now feels like background noise. Even spending time with people you care about feels exhausting rather than energizing. It's not that you don't want to connect or participate. It's that something inside feels disconnected, numb, and distant. This is one of the most painful aspects of depression because it creates a sense of alienation from yourself. You start to wonder, what happened to me? Why don't I feel anything anymore? That emptiness feeds self-doubt and self-criticism. People on the outside might assume you've become lazy or indifferent, but what they don't see is that you're grieving the loss of your own enthusiasm. You're mourning the fact that activities and relationships that used to give you meaning now feel out of reach. Depression changes the brain in ways that make it difficult to experience pleasure. It interferes with motivation, drains your ability to focus, and dulls your emotional responses. So while laziness is about choice, depression is about capacity. You may desperately want to enjoy life the way you used to, but your mind and body simply aren't cooperating. That's not a matter of effort. It's a matter of illness. This lack of interest also fuels isolation. When you can't muster excitement for activities or connections, it becomes easier to retreat, which only deepens the cycle. Friends and family may misinterpret this withdrawal as rejection, but in reality, it's a symptom of the silent weight you're carrying. What you need most in those moments is understanding, patience, and gentle encouragement, not blame or judgment. Recognizing this distinction helps shift the narrative. If you find yourself no longer enjoying the things that once brought you joy, it's not because you're lazy. It's because depression has interrupted your ability to connect with life fully. And acknowledging that truth can be the beginning of reclaiming your spark. Another powerful sign that you're dealing with depression rather than laziness is the heavy weight of guilt and self-criticism that seems to follow you everywhere. Laziness usually doesn't come with shame. You might put something off, but you don't necessarily sit around hating yourself for it. Depression, on the other hand, makes you feel like you're failing. Even when you're doing your best, it convinces you that you're not good enough, that you're letting everyone down, and that you should be trying harder, even when your energy is already running on empty. This constant inner dialogue can be brutal. You wake up already feeling behind, already feeling guilty for not being productive enough, present enough, or strong enough. Even the smallest tasks feel like mountains. And when you can't climb them, you berate yourself instead of recognizing the weight you're carrying. That cycle of guilt and shame doesn't exist in laziness. It's specific to depression because depression distorts your perception of yourself and your worth. What makes this so damaging is how invisible it can be to others. People may see you sitting quietly, resting, or struggling to finish something and assume you're simply unmotivated. What they don't see is the relentless voice in your head that tells you you're worthless because of it. That inner critic is exhausting and often harsher than anything someone else could say to you. It keeps you trapped in a loop of self-blame that feeds the depression even more. And it's important to understand that this guilt isn't rational. You can logically know that you're doing what you can, but depression makes logic irrelevant. It's an emotional weight that presses down no matter how much you've accomplished. That's why telling someone with depression to just stop feeling guilty doesn't work. It's not a choice, it's a symptom. The truth is, the presence of guilt and self-criticism where it doesn't belong is not a weakness. It's a signal. It's your mind's way of showing that you're in pain and that you need care, not condemnation. Recognizing this distinction is vital because when guilt is driving your thoughts, it's not laziness at all. It's depression asking for understanding and healing. Another clear sign that what you're facing is depression and not laziness is the deep sense of disconnection from the things that once brought you joy. Laziness is usually temporary. You might not feel like doing something in the moment, but if it's something you love, you'll eventually find energy or excitement to return to it. Depression, however, strips away that spark completely. Activities, hobbies, or passions that once made you feel alive suddenly feel meaningless or heavy. It's not that you don't want to enjoy them, it's that you can't. No matter how hard you try, this loss of interest, known as anhedonia, can be one of the most painful aspects of depression. Imagine someone who used to love music but now finds the songs they cherished sound flat, or someone who loved painting but can't even pick up a brush. It feels like losing parts of yourself, like watching color drain out of life. Laziness doesn't rob you of your passions like this. Depression does. And this makes everyday living feel not just exhausting but empty. This disconnection can also affect relationships. You might stop reaching out to friends or decline invitations, not because you don't care about them, but because the energy and joy you once shared feels inaccessible. To outsiders, it may look like withdrawal or lack of interest, but inside it's grief over being unable to feel what you used to feel. That grief can deepen the depression, making you believe you've lost yourself forever. But the truth is, this isn't who you are, it's what depression does. It numbs the brain's reward system, making pleasure harder to access, but that doesn't mean the capacity for joy is gone. It's still there, buried beneath the weight of the illness, waiting to be uncovered again with the right support and healing. Understanding this difference is essential because blaming yourself for not enjoying life only reinforces the cycle of pain. So when you notice that it's not laziness keeping you from what you love, but a deeper inability to feel joy, it's a signal that you're dealing with depression, not a lack of willpower. And that recognition is the first step toward compassion and recovery. One of the most misunderstood signs that you are depressed and not lazy is the overwhelming sense of guilt and shame that seems to follow you everywhere. Laziness does not carry this emotional weight. If you skip a task out of laziness, you might shrug it off or even laugh about procrastinating. But when depression is at play, every undone task feels like a personal failure, and every small shortcoming becomes evidence that something is deeply wrong with you. This constant self-criticism doesn't just drain your motivation, it crushes your spirit. Depression whispers lies into your mind. You're worthless, you'll never get it right, you're letting everyone down. These thoughts aren't simply passing feelings of regret. They're persistent voices that distort your self-image and convince you that you're a burden to others. Even when you manage to accomplish something, depression finds a way to minimize it, telling you it wasn't enough or that anyone else could have done better. Laziness doesn't trap you in this cycle of self-blame. Depression does. This guilt often extends to the people you love. You might feel ashamed for not showing up as the friend, parent, partner, or child you think you should be. You may believe others are secretly disappointed in you, even if they've never said so. And that belief can push you further into isolation because you start withdrawing to avoid letting people down. What looks like disinterest to the outside world is often just the unbearable weight of feeling like you're not good enough. At the core of this lies a painful misunderstanding. You are not failing because you're lazy. You're struggling because you're unwell. Depression convinces you that your exhaustion is a moral flaw, that your sadness is weakness, and that your limitations are proof you're inadequate. But none of that is true. These feelings are symptoms of the illness, not reflections of your character. Recognizing that guilt and shame are signals of depression, not laziness, is powerful because it allows you to shift from self-blame to self-compassion. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you begin to see the real question, "What support do I need right now?" And that change in perspective is often the first gentle step toward healing.